Hi, my name is Khristina Raymond, and this is my Change Campaign project on fighting against racism in school settings. Using the novel Ace of Spades, written by Farida Abike-Anide, in this presentation, I'll talk about how racism appears in school systems, sometimes loudly but more often silently, and how the book shows us the impact it can have on students in real life. Racism doesn't always look violent or loud, sometimes it hides in silence through policy and power. Students of color, especially Black students, face racism in schools every day, and most of the world chooses to look away. Ace of Spades reflects this reality through the experience of Devon and Chimaka, two Black students targeted in a school that claims to be fair. Systemic racism in schools. Systemic racism means racism that is embedded into institutions like schools, jobs, or even in our laws, not just individual people. In education, this shows up in biased discipline, low teacher expectation, Eurocentric curriculums, for example, not having enough racialized material, and unequal access to opportunities. Example, Black students are suspended more often, underrepresented in gifted programs, and often are the only ones in the room. Racism is often ignored when it comes from students, for example, racial slurs or jokes that aren't taken seriously. Systemic racism in Ace of Spades. In Ace of Spades, racism is not just about individual students being mean, it's built into the system. Devon and Chimaka are the only Black students in their grade at Nivius Academy, an elite private school. They are constantly surveilled, isolated, and eventually targeted by ACEs, a group meant to protect white students' power. The school system in the book pretends to be inclusive but actively works against the success of Black students. This mirrors real-life schools where students of color are accepted but never truly supported, and just because people don't see it doesn't mean that it's not happening in real life. Why this problem continues. Racism in schools often go unchallenged because it's not always visible. No slurs, just patterns. Subtle things like students of color being punished more or being treated differently by teachers. It's not always easy to recognize unless you experience it, but the impact it has is serious and long term, especially when adults don't step in. Why are students who use racial slurs often not held accountable? School policies across school boards ban slurs, but rules are not always enforced equally. Racist language is often ignored or downplayed, especially if staff are unsure how to respond. This creates a message that racist behavior is tolerated in the school environment, and that silence protects racism and makes students feel like they're not worthy or that they're alone. If schools don't name a problem, they can't solve it. Real world examples. It's not just Black students who face racism in schools, it's other students of colors that experience it too. A 2010 CCM report found Islamophobia in schools is increasing and complaints are often ignored. Another report is that Indigenous students' cultures are often ignored, except during events like Orange Shirt Day, which is sometimes treated superficially. Many South Asian students are mocked for their food, accents, or names. In 2017, Toronto District School Board showed the data that Black students made up only 12% of high schoolers, but nearly 48% of expulsions. And everyday racism also appears in casual ways, like students using the N-word, mocking accents, stereotyping, and not being held accountable. How can racism be solved in the classroom? Realistic solutions like anti-racism training for teachers and staff helps them learn about biases and inequality. Fuck that, Aaron. How can it be solved? We need to make an... No, Aaron! How can racism in classrooms be solved? Realistic solutions like anti-racism training for teachers and staff is a big step towards real change. Schools need to hire more Black and racialized educators and guidance counselors so students feel seen and supported. The curriculum needs to be reformed to include Black Canadian history, more Indigenous knowledge, and diverse global voices across all subjects, not just history. Schools should use restorative justice instead of relying only on punishment. This approach helps students take accountability and repair harm rather than just creating fear. And some provinces like British Columbia, Manitoba, and Ontario have added anti-racism education into their curriculum. Some school boards have also created equity policies and students' voice groups, but these efforts often don't go deep enough, and a lot of students say racism is still there, just more hidden now, so other students don't get in trouble. What can students do? If you hear or see racism, call it out. Silence helps racism continue, but using your voice can help stop it. Use platforms like school newspapers, social media, or assemblies to raise awareness and educate others. One student taking a stand can influence others to shift the culture around the school. Call to action. We can't fix a system we won't admit that is broken. Ace of Spades may be fiction, but the racism it shows is very real. Schools should be places of safety and growth for everyone, not just those who fit the mold. Change begins when we stop pretending and start doing the hard work of equity, truth, and justice. Thank you for listening to my presentation.